The harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few. Why did he use that word?
God goes to extreme measures to bring the lost to himself.
The greatest gift you will ever give this world is your intimacy with God.
The Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit are all three inside of me. I've got the power right now.
I think what Jesus really wants is people to go. I want to be the answer to Jesus' prayer request.
Welcome to the Fuel for the Harvest podcast.
When this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, then shall the end come.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this latest episode of Fuel for the Harvest. This is Nathan.
And this is Charlie. We're your host for today. And we just returned from spending time with believers from all across the MENA region. You recently heard an episode on one of the brothers from an Arab country within the Middle East, North Africa. And
that's what MENA stands for, by the way.
Yes, Middle East, North Africa. And he had given his life to Jesus. What a powerful testimony. And we were so excited and encouraged at what God has been doing, just hearing from these believers, how they've come to Christ and what God is up to now. And one of the consistent things that we're hearing and seeing all across the globe, I know we've mentioned it before, but we've just been seeing it again, that it's revival awakening time. There's one sister in Christ, she was sharing how she's been praying and she really believes that Jesus has been speaking to her and saying, hey, this is the time for the Middle East. Let's invest, let's come. That's one of the reasons that led her to these meetings that we were a part of as she was in prayer and had peace about it and connecting it back to this is the time God is opening up doors for the Middle East. Not that people weren't coming to Christ before, that people would kind of knock down the doors and find ways to share Jesus in the midst of the difficulty. But for whatever reason, now's a time that there's some special way that God is opening up favor and opportunity for the gospel to be proclaimed and hearts to be more opened at a wider scale. In fact, there were some other brothers as well from these regions that said, hey, we've been traveling all over these regions and we see it as well, that God is opening up opportunity and favor in this time for whatever reason. And so, again, we're seeing revival awakening time. I would encourage us to take advantage of it. And we just wanted to hop on this episode and share some more testimonies of what we're hearing, what we're seeing, how people are coming to Christ and have come to Christ. And so when you hear all of these, be encouraged and be challenged. And I hope that what we'll walk away with is saying, hey, if God is opening hearts, let's do everything that we possibly can to take advantage of that and proclaim Jesus wherever we go.
Agreed. And, whenever people say, it's a revival awakening time, I think my gut is to always be a little bit skeptical. But I think for me, hearing from these brothers and sisters who are saying, like, we're seeing freedom to proclaim, not that the laws are changed, but there's just an openness like we have never seen before, has really been, like, so to speak, the final nail in the coffin to convince me that there really is something, God's doing something right now, and definitely don't want to miss it.
Like Charlie I would say, even at a government level, some of them are pointing at not only at the individualistic level, but even at a government level, boundaries and borders are opening up in new ways.
Agreed. And we heard incredible story after incredible story. Like Charlie said, you guys heard an incredible story last week on the podcast. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to interview everybody for the sake of the podcast. And it would have been very difficult because many of them did not speak English. Thankfully, our brother last week spoke some English, so we were able to interview him. But we still wanted you to hear some of these stories because they're just incredible. I'll start with probably the simplest one we heard. A man born into a Muslim family, and it was normal for him. And his uncle decided to follow Jesus. And one day, him and his uncle were talking, and his uncle said this sentence, "God is love." And he said, that was the beginning and end of my story. It's very, very simple. For me as a Muslim, those words are totally foreign. They respect God, they honor God, they revere him as holy, but the idea that God is love or would want a personal relationship with them, that's totally foreign. And so it was from that time forward that he decided to follow Jesus. Just incredible.
Yeah, just something so small like that. God is love. Radically, that was the seed that led to his life radically transforming. Another one that literally just takes 10 seconds to share. One guy shared, uh, he heard the good news proclaimed on some TV channel. He just happened to turn it on, heard the good news about Jesus, and said, "You know what? I'd like to believe that," and gave his life to Christ, which points to we should be doing everything we can in all the unique ways to proclaim Jesus, to get the message out there, and that when we all use our unique gifts, it actually changes the horizon of history. It changes the landscape, and it impacts people. All of these people are different, so they're going to hear in different ways. And there were some other brothers as well, from, we'll just say, all of these places are Muslim. So and they're all in this Arab world, but there were some others who had been put in prison for their faith recently, and this is the first time. Obviously they're not in prison because we were just in meetings with them. So for the first time in history, they were released without being put to death. Whenever
Yeah.
believers were put in prison in this nation and location, they have always been put to death.
Mm.
And for the first time in history, these guys were released.
Mm.
And they declared, man, this did not make us scared, or more hesitant. In fact, we are now emboldened and we have more courage to share with people because God miraculously let us out for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And he's working among them in really powerful ways.
Yeah, incredible. The story has a lot of details, but the police came and found them in their homes and took them and put them in prison for like almost a month, like somewhere between half a month and a month. And they were threatened with their lives. They were going to be killed. Like, I mean, these believers went through everything, and they had many opportunities to deny Christ and save their lives, because they continued to be threatened and threatened and threatened. They said, "Hey, sign this contract that you believe that Allah is God." And they said, or the Muslim God is God. And they said, "We won't sign it." And they were given another one that said, "Well, we don't have a problem with Islam." They said, "We won't sign that one. We have a problem with Islam." And they had a bunch of different opportunities to get away, and they chose, "No, we're going to remain faithful to Jesus." And God created a way for them to get out. And like Charlie said, just incredible that they're not less bold now. They're not more worried. They're less worried now because of all the miracles that they saw. Just absolutely incredible. Another story from the same region, another guy born Muslim, him and his friends kind of got tired of Islam and kind of went atheistic, I guess. You know, they're culturally Muslim, probably still going to the mosque and stuff like that, but definitely not believing that God is real or anything like that. And they said, "You know what? Let's figure out if there's something on the other side." So they made a deal. There were 3 of them. They said, "We're going to flip a coin. Whoever the coin lands on, that person, we're going to strangle them close to death and see if they see anything." So when the guy told this part of it,
Could you imagine being one of those friends? Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's
Yeah.
do it.
when the guy told it this story, he moved his trachea right and left, like several inches, like he could just flick it left and right, like you couldn't anyway. So the rope had some negative effects on him. So he said, "If the coin lands on me, I'm going to be the one to see the vision, or to get strangled." Ends up that he sees a vision. He used the word vision. That's the word I'll use too. And in this vision, he sees a long line of people. Half of them he knows, half of them he doesn't. Half of them are alive, half of them are dead. And he said, he felt like this overwhelming sense of like, I did something terrible just now, and I need to go ask everybody for forgiveness. So starting at one end of the line, he goes through and he begins to hug everybody and ask for their forgiveness. Then he gets to the very front of the line, and he wants to go and hug this person at the front of the line, but he's not able to. And instead, he says that he's pushed, like he can't move forward. He can't get close to this person, and he goes down to his knees. Then suddenly he wakes up from this dream vision thing with an oxygen mask on his face. For years, he describes this event to other people in his life, to Muslims and everybody in his life, and nobody can explain it. Finally, he runs across a Christian who shows him a picture of Jesus, and he says, "That's the guy." And he decided to follow Jesus from that day forward. That was the guy in his vision, was Jesus. Pretty crazy, man.
Powerful. And now he loves Jesus. He has a family. They're proclaiming Jesus in really hard places. Radically encountered him.
Mm.
Man, so many exciting things, so many exciting testimonies, and I love that they're all different.
Mhm.
Like every single person encountered Jesus in a different way, pointing to, hey, every person's unique and God wants to encounter them in unique ways. Like what does that mean? He'll meet us exactly where we're at. So if you're like, man, how is this for my life if I'm listening? Or what about a family member? I think calling out to God, knowing that he can and he will and he desires to meet us, not somewhere distant, but exactly where we are, and then he'll take us from there. Like we've seen with all these believers from all sorts of backgrounds. One that's really compelling is another, and this guy liked to ask hard questions. So he grew up in a Muslim family, as all these others, and he began to ask the imams and other Muslim teachers the tough questions. Hey, what about this? What about that? Not in an antagonistic way, but in a way of learning. I want to actually know what's behind this. I want to be able to stand on it. And he said that nobody could really give compelling answers to him. It was just, this is the way it is, and there's no other reason. Just take it for what it is. And so he's growing up. He's a young boy at the time, 12, 13, and he's living in a very hard place, one of the toughest places. And a Christian family moves in to the same complex where his family was living. And all of his family and all the other Muslims said, these are dirty, horrible, evil people. They're Christians. Don't talk to them. Don't even return a greeting to them when they say good morning. So he said that he was doing that, and eventually, culturally, he felt internally so much shame. Like, I I can't ignore them. Like, they're saying good morning. I have to at least say good morning. So he started greeting them. And then he was like, well, they're kind of friendly. And eventually he got invited into their house. So he went into their house. And he's like, well, maybe they're hiding something. They're just deceiving me or whatever, because I've been told they're so terrible. But eventually, over time, as he continued to get invited, he would secretly, without his family knowing, go and spend time with this family. And they loved him, he says, more than his own family loved him. Eventually, they're giving him birthday cakes, they're sharing time with him. And he's like, what is going on? Like, what do they have that I don't have? Like, what is this Christian thing? They're loving me more than my own family loves me. That's different. And eventually his family had found out that he was spending time with this Christian family, and they're like, hey, you cannot do this. This is very, very, very bad. You need to quit. And so he was really sad about it, because he thought these people are really kind, really loving. And so he came up with a great solution. He said, I'll convert them to Islam so I can still spend time with them. So he went over there and to their kids started saying, hey, here's the Quran, here is Muhammad, this is Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet, and you need to know these things. And they were like, no, they didn't really like it, whatever. They told their mom. The mom's like, hey, don't fight against him. Like, he's probably having some trouble. That's what he's taught. Just, it's okay. Just let him be. And so finally he's cheering with the mom, and he asks her, like, what is this Christian thing? Tell me, like, what is it? And he just learned a few things from her, just a few words. This was an ordinary family, what we would call laborers. And they planted a seed of, hey, this is Jesus, and he's loved us, and we're loving you. And he didn't know a lot. He knew Jesus Christ, redemption, something like that. That's all he knew. And they moved away for work or something else. So you've got this young guy who had spent this time up close to this family. They planted seeds through their lives of love and caring about him and sharing a few words about Jesus. And he's hooked. He's like, I got to at least figure out what is this thing. And so as he grows, everything that he does, every job that he takes revolves around his curiosity of figuring out what is this Christianity thing. So he goes into the tourism industry, starts working with foreigners, starts connecting with others who he thinks might have an idea. And he asks one after the other, after the other, after the other, hey, what's this? Like, you know anything about Christianity? What is that? And people would like, well, oh yeah, like, there's the Vatican, and there's this like historic, it's Christianity and history. And he's like, no, 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 not historically or geographically. Like, I want to know the religion. What's this faith about? What is it? What's the core of it? What is it about? And imagine this. He searched and sought out people and asked questions, and he couldn't find someone to tell him for 20 years.
Right. And it's about this point in the story that sitting there, I just remember, like, I'm not a tearful person. I've said that on the podcast before, but man, I was moved to some degree of emotion. Like, he's so hungry for years,
20 years.
seeking for years, so hungry, and no one there to tell him.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So finally, this guy who he had asked these questions to, who was unable to answer his questions, said, "Hey, I think I just found a family that you should meet with, an older couple. They're called missionaries." And he's like, "I don't know what a missionary is, but sure." So he develops a relationship, a friendship with these missionary people, and eventually lets them know that he's really interested to hear about what is this Christianity thing, which they were very shocked because they hadn't had an experience with somebody seeking in that way. And so turns out they start meeting weekly. Imagine this, 7 to 8 hours every Friday. They met for 3 years. And this brother says he probably asked them 5,000 or 6,000 questions. And eventually they answered all of them. And at the end of that, he gives his life to Christ and is baptized. And now to this day is making an impact all across the Arab world, making disciples, sharing Jesus with people in the same way that his life was transformed. And something that moved me about this story is on the front end, an ordinary family, laborers, living a life of love and pointing to Jesus, planted a seed that could not be quenched in this guy's life.
Mm.
But what if there was another laborer who could have been in his life that he didn't have to wait 20 years?
Mm.
So I'm going, man, let's pray and let's seek and work and labor together using all our unique gifts that all these testimonies point toward, to say, let's get more laborers into more harvest fields. Like, if that apartment complex or other places his family had been just had laborers, people who were like, yeah, let me tell you what you're looking for, he probably didn't have to wait 20 years.
It's true. Those brothers who were thrown in prison emphasized the importance of ordinary people in their movement because their church is, quote unquote, underground and meeting in small groups. And so the importance of ordinary people in that situation. Another person who we didn't tell you their story yet, he was sharing about how it was an ordinary person who had the opportunity to speak to the leader of a particular country that led to an increased freedom for them to do baptisms in public for the first time in living memory.
And imagine this, it was during Ramadan of all times.
Right.
And just, wow.
And he said it was that ordinary person who made such an impact on the leader of that country that led to this freedom. And he said, those people who got baptized, I'm going to take this training, this laborer's training, I'm going to take it back to my country, and I'm going to use it to mobilize those people so that they can have a greater impact. And his words to me were, I'm going to train them and send them out, and you just watch what they'll do. And so really exciting. It seems like, and we've said this on the podcast before, but it's just being confirmed again and again, that laborership is the future of the gospel moving forward in all of these difficult and restricted places. Because being a pastor on a stage or having some building and building some building and then inviting people to that building, and like those things are almost impossible, if not impossible. Meanwhile, ordinary people sharing the love of Jesus and sharing the good news of Jesus wherever they go, hard to stop something like that. Because can't control every word out of every mouth in every single situation. It seems that, and of course, we're not against pastors and churches, and we love all those people. And if you're one of those people, we love you and we thank you. But it's just
technically, we are one of those people.
Yeah, exactly. I would be judging myself, but it's just that the speed and the multiplication of the movement is dependent not just on leaders, but on ordinary people moving it forward. And so really, really it was so encouraging just to see that and see it confirmed again and again, and hear these stories of just how Jesus works in just incredible, amazing ways.
And you can be part of it in the future. I would say this is modern stories of laborers. This movement goes all the way back to Jesus. It's always been that way. And of course, it will continue to be that way. And I think God uses all sorts of unique ways to get the message out there. And so I think you should ask yourself, what are the unique things God has given you? And how can you utilize them right now in this season of history to advance the message of Jesus to the ends of the earth, to places where people are desperately waiting to hear of him? Don't let the world go by. Don't let people go by waiting 20 years for somebody just to reach out and share with them. We could be the answer to change that and get the message out on technology, to get it out personally, one-on-one, to proclaim it as many places, as many people as possible, to equip others to do the same. That's what I take away from all these testimonies.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining this latest episode of Fuel for the Harvest. We hope you have a great rest of your day. God bless.